Today's episode of Path to Power is brought to you by Greenman, an Irish investment management firm with over 20 years of experience.
Greenman Open is a European long-term investment fund, or LTIF. It's focused on grocery-anchored retail real estate. These are the kinds of properties that some investors believe remain essential even in uncertain markets. People still need to buy food. That's what they say makes this sector more resilient and more stable over the long term.
Unlike many alternative investment funds that are only available to professionals, Greenman Open is open to a wide range of investors with lower minimum investments and a highly regulated structure.
Just remember, all investments carry risk. Values can go up or down, and past performance isn't a reliable guide to future returns. Greenman Open is a regulated LTIF, but you should always speak to a financial advisor before investing. Learn more on the website greenmanopen.com.
Hello and welcome to Path to Power. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
There are four main things we're going to be talking about on today's podcast. We're going to be talking about the latest housing figures, which show we have a real crisis. The summer economic statement is coming next week, but in advance of that, we're going to be talking about whether the government is going to hang tough on its seeming commitment to reining in excessive spending. We're going to talk about the Occupied Territories Bill and perhaps people getting a little bit more windy about that given the concerted campaign that Israel is now mounting against it. And also we will be talking about the latest developments in the presidency, where Mary Lou McDonald, will she or will she not run? Ivan doesn't think she will. We'll get to that. Catherine Connolly as well, and the Fine Gael position with Mairead McGuinness confirmed as candidate. We're recording this early on a Friday morning, and Ivan arrived late and irate because
I'm never late. So I left home at 6:30, and so I would listen to the sort of 6:30 News Talk business news, listen to the first 40 minutes of News Talk breakfast, and then switch over to Morning Ireland. Do you think they mentioned once that on the bleeding N11 from Stillorgan, there was the first time? So this traffic seems we were ahead of time getting to the Shankill area, just off the M11, and next thing I saw Garda lights up, and so there must be an accident because it was actually crawling in an area. A 30-minute delay, so there was nothing on any traffic news from RTE and News Talk Press. Nobody works on a Friday night. They tune out. They're thinking of the weekend, when they get their first bevy and all that nonsense. So therefore, there was no alert to anyone. You should go the Blackrock Road or whatever. And so what happened? I said, well, it was only once you get past the accident, you'll be fine. And what did I find? No. The cops were actually in front and behind of a very slow-moving 30-minute delay. I Googled it to find there was a protest against the City West iPass Centre.
Just nowhere near City West.
Exactly. How that should be put on the busiest thoroughfare into town on a Friday morning at peak hour. What we need in this country is water cannon to deal with these protesters. I met my accountant on Wednesday, and the amount of tax I am going to have to remit on behalf of my little small operation on the 23rd of September for this year's half year, and then again on the 23rd of November, is insane. There is actually, we're run by a crowd of cretins and muppets, and this country desperately needs proper order restored.
And you see, I was about to start by saying to you, as I walked over here today, the 35-minute walk from my home, I couldn't get over how little traffic there was on the roads.
Now you're just taking the piss out of me.
It was
You're just winding me up now.
It was quieter than a Saturday morning, actually. It was the only thing that it was missing was people out cycling and all the mammals out doing their weekend cycle. But it did strike me that you must have been irate. I don't know if you heard the story this week. The Financial Services Union did a survey of members of the staff at Bank of Ireland. And they overwhelmingly, I think about 90%, rejected the proposals that have come from Bank of Ireland management that all staff must be in the office 8 days a month. And it has been overwhelmingly rejected by the unions.
A minimum of 8 days?
Basically 8 days a month.
So that's about
2 days a week.
Well, 4.5 weeks in a month, so that'd be 9 days a week. Would be 2 days.
So not a week, a month, 8 days a month.
And like a lot of those things, you need a form for that. Well, I'm not actually at a printer. I'm not actually in the bank. I'm a customer of the Bank of Ireland. I mean,
when did you last go to the bank? Don't you do everything online?
And actually,
from the comfort of your home. So why can't the staff do it from the comfort of their home?
Actually, I had to go to the bank on Tuesday to get a very large withdrawal for sterling because I'm going to Goodwood races. I needed cash for that. So I actually used the bank.
You withdraw by weight, is it?
And no, would you believe it? Gertrude, who's fantastic, she's retiring. I just text her, I will need move this to this account, close this account, do that, this sterling and all the rest of it. And I just walked in 11 o'clock, sign here.
Do they have enough cash, actually? Do they have to send to Dublin for a Brinksmat van to come down with enough for you?
You have to give them 48 hours notice, all right, for the sterling.
Are you going to miss the Galway races?
I'm deliberately avoiding the Galway races because I've lost so much for the last 2 years. I said I'd go to Goodwood instead to stop myself on those crazy big handicap races.
Hold on. Are you actually? You think you've a better chance of making money?
Absolutely. Better class rating.
Is this something that your accountant told you to do?
No. He just tells me how much tax to pay.
Okay, something else that got you irate. You should have come by train as you normally do. And
but there isn't a train at this hour. The 6:20 wouldn't get me in on time. If I could, I would have, okay?
Right.
We don't have a functioning country at this stage.
Sorry, we're here at this time of the morning because you have other things to go and do later,
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, okay. I know you're, and rightly so. If Wexford, the last time they're in the All-Ireland final was 96, and I know you're going to be officiating at the Cork celebration, the official event afterwards, and your head, be careful what you wish for. I'm hearing Tipperary are very confident.
They're very confident.
They think they're under the radar.
I think they're very, very confident.
I think Cork will win now myself. I think Cork are the best team in the country.
I think it's going to be very close. I'm taking nothing for granted.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, I'm actively talking Tipperary up as I can.
All Cork people, that's what you're saying out externally.
Sorry,
I don't believe a word of this.
Hold on, don't confuse me for a Kerry person. All right? Okay, I'm a Cork man. Okay, listen, let's get to the main agenda. And one of the other things that made you irate was something that you read coming up in the car this morning. A report this morning in the Irish Independent about new home starts, building starts. And just to put it in perspective, the starts for the month of June were as low as they were any time during COVID. This is a disaster. Yeah, this is government failure writ large.
Yeah. As you know, for my sins, I spend a lot of time with the construction industry, and anecdotally, what I've been hearing over the last 8 or 9 months is, actually we're laying off people. Actually, I'm in London, Ivan. I'm looking at contracts here on the resi side and so on. And it kind of is completely counterintuitive to the national debate about housing and so on. And the figures are just out, quite stark figures from the Department of Housing, that the total number of commitments in the year to date, so that would be from January to the end of June, is 6,325. Compare this to this time last year, it was 34,581. So this tells you where the pipeline is at. But if you want to get a relative comparison, 23, the like-for-like figure instead of 6,300 was 15,500. So we're now down to the level that we had in the first 6 months of COVID. And so therefore, because there was a rebate of your water capital charges and your planning contributions introduced this time last year, last year's figure was bloated. But the truth of it is, and nobody wants to face this, and we're going round in circles, and we're going to come to the Occupied Territories Bill and everything else. I've now come to the conclusion in this country, even though, I am scathing about the inactivity and lack of delivery and getting things done in government, that when there's a consensus amongst the opposition, cheering, you must do this, the Occupied Territories Bill, you must have a cost of living, you must not do things to support the construction industry, nearly always my default position is that consensus, which includes a lot of your media types and so on, is wrong. Go the exact opposite, the way Owen O'Brien, Rory Hearn and Conor Sheehan are telling you to go. And so therefore...
So this is because you're an establishment government supporter.
No, sorry. No, I am pro building 50,000 houses a year, and I don't care who's in government. But what I'm trying to say to you is this, that if you don't get that the planning system is the biggest problem. And Darragh O'Brien got through the election. Oh, and the Taoiseach got through the election. Oh, we've just done, 700 pages of the Planning Act 2024, and that solved it. In many respects, it's made it worse, right? The fact of the matter is the pipeline of planning is the reason why there's so few construction, and each day it's getting worse. So I want to pay tribute to Brendan Slattery, who worked on behalf. He worked for McCann Fitzgerald. I do have a good word to say for the odd lawyer. He worked for Property Industry Ireland, which is not only the construction industry but the real estate.
Sorry, can I just clarify one thing here? I know you keep telling me that you're not a member of the media, although you very much work in the media.
I am absolutely not a member of the media.
Are you going to try and tell me you're not a developer either? Because you
No, I am a developer.
Okay,
I am
at least you're admitting to that.
No, I'm an entrepreneur.
You have invested in
I'm an entrepreneur.
Right,
I'm an entrepreneur.
right.
Okay, I'm an entrepreneur.
And you have, and just remind listeners, you have how many houses being built at present?
So we are in the we have planning permission for 400 houses in the Adamstown of Cork, which is called Waterrock, east of Middleton, for 400 houses, and the first 50 of those are sold and under construction.
Sorry,
they'll be done in phases,
Okay, and have you commenced the other 350?
No, because you see, you can only sell so many at a time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The market can only take so much.
Sorry, there's a reason I asked that, because the way an awful lot of developers, they actually commenced for tax and other reasons, but they haven't actually completed out.
Yeah.
So they might actually clear a site or pour foundations and then leave it before they come back to it.
But with Waterrock, there's going to be 2,500 houses. But really what I'm saying...
Not all by you, though.
No.
You've just got a portion of it.
I'm a small operator. But we're after building the guts of 100 houses in recent areas. Okay. No.
All right, so go back to this guy.
They actually did a review of judicial reviews. So basically, judicial reviews, it's been worked out, are adding about 15 grand to the cost of a home. Okay, everyone cares about the cost of the home. They don't actually care when people spend their time with jail, and it delays process for about 3 years. So that's the deal here. So they did a paper in 2022 that set out the scale of the problems in relation to judicial reviews. They put out all the statistics, and so on. But basically, they introduced a dozen things now they say that need to be done. So in the UK, if you're an objector, your legal fees are capped at 35,000 sterling. So pro rata here would be 40 grand. Very simple. Amend Section 294 of the 2004 Act. Right. Now, you'd only get your costs. So see, you had 100 reasons for objection, and you only won on some habitat directive, you'd only get your proportionate cost for that, not for the whole thing. They're actually proposing in the scheme you get free legal aid if you have a losing appeal, right? You're actually incentivizing people to have a free hit. They're saying get rid of that in Section 295 of the Act, right? Now, the court...
But sorry, hold on. Aren't there occasions when there are people who have very limited incomes, maybe living in areas where they would suddenly find that something is dropped in on top of them and they have no legal respite unless you give them the free legal aid?
Yeah, we have a choice. We have to build the goddamn stuff or we don't. Someone is going to be upset about something.
So we build them only in areas where people don't have the financial resources to complain, and then we avoid the areas where people can complain, isn't it?
No, we deal with those objectors head on everywhere, and particularly in the wealthy areas, and we do it. Now, one of the options open to the judiciary, right, and their eminent wisdom, is not to quash it, but to actually impose conditions on it. So they put, so say there's a little error, like the consultation for Clonshock in terms of the EPA and Bord Planola. Instead of quashing the whole thing or holding the whole thing up for 3 years, you just tell them to go fix that.
Yes, common sense would suggest, wouldn't it, that rather than the entire thing failing on one particular point, that you address that point and you make changes. But again, aren't those things supposed to be dealt with while you're going through the planning process before you get to the decision and stuff, that these things should be spotted and dealt with along the way?
Well, the point is the objectors want to hold it up as long as possible, and they don't want to get an outcome that actually manages and cures the problem, fixes the problem. So, like in this case, Section 288 needs to be deleted and so on, so that you can cure the problem rather than quashing it. There's also a series of things that make a quick decision. The idea that if you're in Sligo, you could object to a development in Cork, that needs to be regulated. Like, you have to show that you have some skin in the game.
Well, actually, that is most famously the one with that is the Apple plant in Ormore. This is not housing, but it is relevant. When Apple wanted to do a data centre in Ormore, it was somebody down in Wexford or Wicklow, I think it was Wexford, who led the objection in relation to that for a while, mainly because he wanted Apple to build a plant or a data centre on land he had down in the southeast of the country.
Like you've got to ask yourself. So local connection for actually lodging it. The other thing is that where is the common good? So here are judges going through the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's, finding reasons, and there is no application of common sense. So what I'm saying, and what this is saying, is for national infrastructure, and this goes back to the O'Keefe case, Justice Finlay ruled in 1993 that there is an overriding public good to build a sewerage scheme, to provide a water scheme, or whatever that might be. And so therefore, they don't have this common good criteria.
Built into the new legislation.
Exactly.
The 700 pages which they're boasting of doesn't make provision for the common good.
Yeah. So my summary point is this. There's 12 very detailed particular points of the 2024 Act that need to be amended. Just would you do it? Just would you do it? Like, we spent 3 years going through this bill. It made mistakes. And the reason why the pipeline of housing, mark my words, in 2026, right, the housing output's going to go down to 25,000. It's going to get worse rather than better. And the reality of this, it is the planning system, it's the zoning system, it's on board Planola, and it's the density issues, it's the red tape, and people can build houses easier elsewhere.
Okay, but why has the government got itself into this bind? I mean, this government is in power since 2020. It must know all of these issues. Housing has been for the last decade a major problem. They've had the Housing Commission, which has been telling them everything. They've had various vested interests in lobbying them as well. They know that this is a thing that, when all the opinion polls are done, is top of the list of priorities for people. Affordable housing that people can buy as much as they can rent. So how is it that they've made such an absolute hames of it? I know they're going to come out probably next week around the time of the summer economic statement, National Development Plan updated, and we'll hear lots of stuff about how in various county council areas they'll be lifting the limits and things and the caps on the amount of new development, and they will cheer that. And that's all important and necessary.
And worthy of support. Yeah.
And worthy of support. But will it bring us anywhere nearer to actually getting the things built? And I'll tell you something else I just thought of, and I said this to you earlier in the year. When Micheál Martin started talking back in February about the possibility of tax changes and things like that to incentivise developers, and then sort of backed off it, I said to you at the time that I'd been told by developers that this was crazy. They were talking to outside investors outside the country who were saying, well, just wait and see what comes up in the budget in October. It effectively froze investor interest in getting involved in things.
Because the uncertainty.
Yeah. And he created the uncertainty that if he was going to change the tax laws to try and encourage, there had to be a mini budget. It had to be done immediately rather than talking about something that would be done 6 to 8 months down the road, which actually implies as well a certain lack of understanding in government as to how business operates.
And not only that, you asked a very specific question. We're talking about, like, this was an emergency in 2016 when Simon Coveney went into the Custom House for rebuilding Ireland. It was an emergency then, and it's got worse since. And I'll tell you why. Because I have facilitated and chaired all these debates across property, across conferences for construction and house building and so on. And in the normal research, as you would do for a farmer conference or whatever, there are experts in universities, academics, experts in Leinster House who've written books on housing, and then on one side, and on the other side you have actually people in hard hats who build stuff and people who invest in stuff, and they have consistently given either an equal rating to these academics and politicos that haven't a bull's notion how to build houses.
Owen Murphy admitted that he failed. He even wrote a book about it. Darragh O'Brien failed. He won't write a book about it and he won't admit it, but he failed. James Lawless looks as if he's... James Brown, looks like he's flailing as well as failing. Right, we'll see how he gets on. But given what you've just said, If there was to be, and there won't be...
So I'm saying there are solutions.
Hold on, but I'm talking politically now.
Yeah.
So if the electorate decided that they've had enough with all of this messing from Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, now they won't get a chance for a number of years unless something dramatic happens and the government falls. But would you be happy to see Owen O'Brien and or Rory Hearn in the Department of Housing running things instead? Would they make sure that it all happened in a better way?
No, I honestly believe it would be a total disaster because all their issues, like eviction bans, like rent freezes, and all these things are inimical to investment. They deal with the symptoms of the problem and not the causes of the problem. And so therefore, this is why I'm so irate that ideologically this government should be solving this, but they've just got mired in not focusing on it clearly. And the National Development Plan, which I want to talk about, but can I just pivot to something?
Just want to finish one point in relation to that. The issue I think that people would have to address with the likes of Owen O'Brien and Rory Hearn is their belief that it will be the state that does all the work. If the state is failing so dramatically and fails in other things as well, how could they be so confident that putting everything over to the state and to the councils...
But we've already... The Land Development Agency is doing that.
It would actually bring about a better outcome. And in addition to that, where do they think the money would all come from? Because there's only so much that the state can actually... listening to the opposition, you think that the state can step in and do everything in housing, whereas in reality... it can only fund maybe a third of what we actually require at best. And even that would be at risk if our corporation tax...
And let's call it out. What you said just there, 24 billion pays 7 billion, right? Is a fact of life.
Sorry, just to extend that, Liz, the state's spending on housing, 7 to 8 billion is about as max as it can go to, but the annual need comes in
at
about 24 billion.
Okay.
And even though I know Owen O'Brien thinks you can build an awful lot cheaper, there's no real evidence to suggest that you can.
Yeah, well, so, and I'll tell you, one of the problems is the media. The media are clueless. They do not cross-hackle these issues. We went through an election where none of these issues were properly ventilated, and it's so superficial, the current hacks, they just have no expertise in this area. But can I just, because I want to pivot on to the Summer Economic Statement.
Which we will do in detail.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, so yesterday, I kind of had a come to Jesus moment because normally I'm stuck in traffic. I'm listening to The Last Word. What losers Matt got on now? You know what I mean? What boring snowflake woke the DEI person has he got on now? But actually, you had a guest on, and I said, stall the ball here a moment. This guy is worth listening to. I don't even know his second name. He's a restaurateur with 12 restaurants.
Oliver Dunn.
Oliver Dunn. So he proceeded to say...
Sorry, let me just say, Bon Appetit restaurant in Malahide. He has 10 restaurants across, mainly in Dublin, but also in Drogheda and Galway. And he's 2 in Galway. He is closing a restaurant in the Clarence Hotel, but that's mainly because of the renovation work that's going on there under new ownership. But he says that his trade is down by about 20%. And he also said that he got in touch with one of his major suppliers who said that their business is down about 19%. But I thought the most interesting thing that he said was a reaction to a listener's comment. The listener texted in to me, and she said that she's fed up, got a pain in her backside listening to restaurateurs giving out about how tough it all is and saying that they need to pivot and they need to change.
You always do this. You go straight down a rabbit hole. You've got a gem of a guest giving you real intel, alive intel, and then you bring on some economist, Austin, whoever he is.
Austin Hughes,
rubbishing it, and then you read some texts which get you completely off the point. Can I just give me a second?
It brought us back exactly to the point that Oliver Dunn had been making.
No.
You weren't listening carefully
I was
enough.
listening very carefully because I actually was... So, can I just tell you this? So, in 2002, when I left politics, I had 6 betting shops. I built it up to 63. And I would have a thing that before every one of the shops closed in the evening, they would fax me a spreadsheet. And it would have the till read, and it would have the payout, and so on. And in 2006, I would look at these, and I would actually sit on my bed with my own pocket calculator and say, before we pay any expenses, what did we win or lose taking the till read and the cash in, cash out? Because running a big business, cash is the most important thing. And would you believe it, and I'll be quite honest about this, in 2006, I couldn't believe it. I was making, after X's, 80 grand a week. And like, there was some weeks I actually made $500,000 gross. Like, it was unbelievable. It was there was money coming out my ears. And then,
glad you said ears.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, fast forward to the peak. Other than Cheltenham, the peak week would be the Builders' Holidays, the last week of Galway, the last week of July, first week of Galway and Goodwood together. And I suddenly noticed, and this will remind me about Oliver Dunn. And I said, right, so you'd have a good shop. A good shop now would say Galway Plate did take in 30,000, right, in bets, or 25,000. A bad shop would take in 15,000. And suddenly I noticed, as I was going through the figures at the end of the week, instead of 25, it was kind of 19. And instead of 15, it was kind of 11. And I know it just wasn't one shop. It was every shop. It was town and country and so on. And I rang some of my top managers. I said, I was a bit disappointed with the turnover last week. We were expecting a big week with the bank holiday and this and that and the other. Oh, well, now Joe was away and, Pat died and so on. And they were coming up with all these things. And I actually said to people, as we reached that high point in the work backwards, I said to economists and so on, the mother of all recessions is coming down the track. I can see it. I immediately spent all my effort trying to sell the business, stopped any acquisitions, and to move forward on it. And Oliver yesterday reminded me of that. And insofar, because the data that your Austins and your economists is about 6-8 months out of date. And so what I want to tell you is big wake-up call, summary economic statement, that actually something has happened whereby people have stopped spending money. And it's not just restaurants, it's not just the price of restaurants, it's in pubs, it's in forecourts, it's everywhere. And the statistics are behind it as an answer. And you know what's happened? Because there may actually be a real recession coming, the fact of the matter is that what the government have done over the whole 6 months of the Trump thing is they have weaponized bad news. They've weaponized what's going to happen to the economy, what's going to happen to exports, to dampen expectations of spending ministers for a good thing.
But it impacts on consumer confidence.
Absolutely. And do they realise what they're doing when they're saying this?
Because consumer spending actually, if you look at the overall numbers, is up marginally. But there are so many more people at work in a growing population, it should be up quite strongly. If you start pulling it back to sort of per head spending, that's where you see people are actually reining in. And we do have a lot of people who are quite wealthy in the country.
Absolutely.
There's an awful lot of people with money in the bank, but leave it in the bank.
Consumer sentiment is on the spin down.
Yes, I think it is. And I think that you're absolutely right to say that if you have this diet of bad news all the time, and it's a bit like the Brexit thing a few years ago. Oh, this could be terrible. This is awful. But I wonder when push comes to shove, and we'll do this in more detail next week when we see what's in the summary economic statement. Will the government hold to the line that is pushing at the moment, that it's going to start reining in current spending increases, that there will be no cost of living package? When push comes to shove, I think they will get rid of the electricity credits. Will they really have cut back on the extra child benefit payments, the extra social welfare payments? The 2.2 million package that went in last October's budget, they say they're not going to repeat it this October, but when it comes to it, when they're getting battered around the place by the opposition, will they change their minds?
Well, first of all, so this again where we have to have a reality check. So first of all, I would just say to Simon Harris and to the government, be very careful what you say in your running commentary on Trump, that you actually aren't killing consumer sentiment inadvertently. Because people are listening to this and they're saying, oh my God, I'm not going to spend that extra grand I was going to do. I'm not going to do up the conservatory. I don't know where my finances are going to be. And it's really damaging. And all the signs that happened in 2007 that were a prelude to the crash in 2008-10 are starting to appear on my radars. Now, let's talk about the cost of living package, right? And again, we have a din and fury from Mary Lou and the opposition, Sinn Féin, who are down 4% in the polls, by the way.
The Irish Times latest poll.
Okay, so, but every day, the cost of butter, the price of this and the price of that.
Yeah, because it's real for many people.
Yeah, absolutely, totally is it real. I eat too. The point is this. I actually went and, because I take this seriously, I studied the Consumer Price Index since January 2024. So in the month of June, the CPI was officially, and it takes account of price of electricity, price of cost of living, cost of mortgages, cost of everything, was 1.6%, right? The last time it exceeded 2% was January 2024. Right? So that's what the data says. Now, if you think the CPI is not accurate, let's have that conversation, but I haven't heard anyone articulate that. My point is this: simply because Mary Lou says something doesn't mean it's true.
Okay, we will talk about Mary Lou in the second part of this podcast when it comes to the presidency. We will talk in much more detail about the economic condition of the country in next week's podcast once we have the summer economic statement.
And the NDP.
And the National Development. And I'm hoping that Ivan will be in a better mood at that stage because he'll be preparing to take the ferry to Goodwood and he'll be in holiday.
If I get delayed in traffic for that, I can tell you. No, like the 20 billion extra is going to be announced next week in the National Development Plan, okay. And that is extra. So
we'll talk about that next week. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the Occupied Territories Bill and the international campaign that Israel is waging against us. And we will also talk about latest presidential news. We got some interesting emails on the back of our conversation about Mary Lou last week, which I want to get to. And we'll do that when we come back after this.
This episode of Path to Power is brought to you by Greenman, an Irish investment management firm. Greenman Open focuses on investing in grocery-anchored retail real estate, designed to generate stable, long-term income. The fund is managed in Ireland. Learn more on the website greenmanopen.com.
Now, before making any investment, it's important to understand the risks. Investments could go up or down, and past performance is not a reliable guide to future results. Greenman Open is a regulated LTIF, but like all investments, it carries risks. You should always seek advice from a financial professional before investing. Welcome back to Path to Power. And don't forget, we have a subscription edition as well. If you're enjoying what we do, we have loads more for it in the subscription edition, which is available at a very, very cheap price, less than the price of a pint for a month's entertainment. So let's get back to our other issues that we want to talk about. There are two major ones that we want to talk about. Let's talk about the Occupied Territories Bill first. And there's a reason this is becoming very interesting because you mentioned just before the break there the latest opinion poll by the Irish Times and Sinn Féin's support going down. Interesting in relation to the government, I think something in the high 30s of people still supporting the government, which probably wouldn't be enough to re-elect it if there was an election, although of course things always change as soon as you get into an election situation, and Sinn Féin coming down. But I think the government, the hopes that the government could change anything is down in the high teens, which is pretty damning. You elect a government to do something and people's faith...
But if they're listening to the podcast, it'd be in the 80s.
No, their belief that they could do something.
Yeah, no, but
they
believe they can't, the majority.
Yeah. Anyway, so listen, what I want to talk about is the Occupied Territories Bill. There's something really interesting going on. I think, Israel is very subtly involved in a proxy propaganda campaign against Ireland. We've heard stuff from their ministers and from their ambassador attacking Ireland, claiming that we're soft on Hamas and stuff. The implication being that we're anti-Semitic. It's all completely wrong, but this is a country that is engaged in genocide in Gaza, over 50,000 deaths consistently now. This is something. Again, I also want to, because you get criticised if you don't do this by the pro-Israel sector. We want to condemn what Hamas did on October 7th, 2023 as absolutely atrocious and wrong, should never have happened, should be absolutely condemned. But it's been calculated as well. Israel has killed more people queuing for food in Gaza this year than died in the October 7, 2023 attack. So, and it's not anti-Semitic to point that out. Two pieces this week really caught my eye. The Wall Street Journal, which I read, had an opinion piece by a legal professor described as a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation in the US, but he's also, if you do a bit of checking on him, he actually lives in Israel in an occupied territory, and that's where he does his work. Anyway, he put forward an argument that the Occupied Territories Bill would have a knock-on consequence that American firms would have to stop trading with Ireland. And this was supported by three other academics who wrote for The Hill, basically saying that if you have a situation whereby there are cancelling of contracts, terminating suppliers or rerouting goods away from Israeli partners in the West Bank, that Americans under existing American legislation would actually have to stop trading with Ireland, because Ireland would be involved in a thing they call boycott, divest and sanction, and there are American laws against that. Now, I think that this has been exaggerated. I don't think it would ever really come to that. But the point is that this is part of a campaign to undermine Ireland. And if you look at the Wall Street Journal piece, whatever about the carefully written argument that was made there, underneath there were hundreds of comments which were all accusing Ireland of anti-Semitism, of saying, well, America should take away all the tax money that America is providing for it through the multinationals. It was a lot of hate for Ireland. And also, IBEC this week did go into an Oireachtas committee and say, and I have heard this from my own business contacts, and I've been hearing it all year, that when they're in America, they're having a difficult time explaining Ireland's position in relation to Palestine. I think Ireland's position in relation to Palestine is extremely principled. What Israel is doing is wrong. But I do think we have to consider whether the Occupied Territories Bill on a cost-benefit analysis is worthwhile. That the benefit of doing it is largely symbolic towards helping the Palestinian people, because the amount of goods coming in is tiny, but the potential consequences to us in the loss of American trade, terrible as it is to be looking at through this prism, could be very large. What do you think?
Well, first of all, my attitude to every issue that comes on, okay, will this improve the prosperity of every man, woman and child in Ireland or not? And I look at our competitiveness and I look at investment and I look at that. And that's my simple kind of yardstick by which I judge everything. And my attitude to the Occupied Territories Bill, Francis Black and all this, well, it's no harm to make, you have gesture politics in relation to Palestine and all the rest of it. Ireland's opinion within the EU has carried no weight. The EU haven't amended the EU-Israeli agreement, trade agreement and so on. So we've been pretty ineffective, and our foreign policy is dictated by the EU. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this would be a stop. But we've now, a couple of things have happened which has changed my mind about this. And according to the poll, I think it's changed a lot of people's mind. And that is, first of all, that the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I actually have a strong respect for John Lahart, the chairman of that committee, as a kind of common sense guy, without a chip off his shoulder and so on, and can see things in the round. So what we saw last week was a number of people giving evidence for the pre-legislative scrutiny before this comes to the floor of the door. And what this actually proposes is that goods, as opposed to services, from Judea, Samaria and part of East Jerusalem would be we could not buy them.
By the way, that part of Jerusalem is where the US embassy to Israel is now situated.
Yes, yeah, and that was changed a few years ago. So what we're looking at now, and then that's the first thing. So, sorry, how would you actually, at the point of entry, say, well, no, this isn't actually from Samaria. This is from a different part of Israel. This is from Tel Aviv. Just go figure that one out. Is that actually practical for an importer or distributor to do that? Secondly, what are we talking about here? What we're talking about is olives and avocados, mostly from this area, and put it like this, it's less than 200 grand a year, right? Of a couple of 100 billion in imports, you know what I mean? Like, what are we actually talking about? So first of all, this is not going to have any meaningful impact in terms of the Israeli government, as opposed to the EU-US tariffs, where you say, oh my God, this will have no impact. There's not even a pinprick there on us. So that's on the upside. What do we stand to gain in terms of changing the situation on the ground for the obvious genocide and obvious outrageous behaviour? And they're not just satisfied with that, they're attacking Syria this week. Like, the Israeli government are gone beyond the pale. But the point is this, what's the sensible thing for Ireland to do? And is this vehicle the one to do it? And you have to come to the conclusion. And then you have an issue of, okay, north-south, how you would segregate stuff that's going to Northern Ireland, in Dublin, and what's going to the Republic of Ireland. So I'm coming to the conclusion that when you see these 10 people from Capitol Hill who've come out last week, cross-party, right? So you have Republicans and Democrats who have come out, 10 members of Congress, right? Lawler, Crapo, Stober, and
Risch, McLean.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. You'd know these people. They're senators and so on. You have another of your favourites, Lindsey Graham, and so on. The point is this.
And you also have the Paddy Wackery from the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee.
Yeah.
And he said, did the Irish fall into a vat of Guinness and propose something so stupid that would be attributed to active diplomatic intoxication? It will harm Arabs as much as Israelis. Sober up, Ireland. Call Israel and say you're sorry. So there he is, the sort of the racist trope, the drunken Irish, and that we don't know what we're doing.
See, as far as I'm concerned, the point of this podcast is not to tell people what they want to hear, but what they need to know. And in my genuine opinion, the downside risk for Ireland, its international reputation, versus what we can conceivably make a difference for on the ground in Gaza, means we need to have a rethink about this, and the adults in the room need to take a deep breath.
Okay, and let me just add a couple of things. Danny McCoy of IBEC, who is, I think, a very intellectual figure as well, he said, we're not talking about millions here. This is not about actually helping in any material way. It's symbolism and moral positioning and so on. However, with moral positions, you can also reveal hypocrisy. He said our stand on Israel is well-intentioned, but, quote, it is causing us significant damage. Quantifying it is really difficult, but we know it's going to have consequences. There's one other thing I want to bring in here before we move on. Alan Shatter. I mean, like...
It was disgraceful. It was
Yeah,
disgraceful.
I mean, this week, I don't want to just, in case people don't know.
No, he has been disgraceful for the last 8 months.
Well, I'm delighted that you're calling him out in this because he said the Occupied Territories Bill discriminates against Jewish people, is a sectarian measure based on falsehoods, and was reminiscent of Nazi Germany legislation. Now, that's a ridiculously exaggerated complaint, but it has grabbed headlines as he wanted, and really, he may be entitled to his own opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts. And Alan Shatter, it is so, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, it's so disappointing that he would actually, and then, does he think that, he seems to think that any criticism of Israel, no, I'm going to be careful how I say this, he should maybe have a look at what people like the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said this week in relation to Israel's plans essentially to turn, and he used the word, Gaza into a concentration camp, right? There are people in Israel who are absolutely appalled and opposed to what its government is doing under Benjamin Netanyahu. You have former prime ministers talking about things being done that would be turning part of Gaza into a concentration camp, and it is not anti-Semitic when a former Israeli prime minister is the person who says that.
Look, the story about Alan is we were elected to the Dáil the same day as 1981 in that Garrett wave. I've shared an office with him. I've been on the front bench with him. On the different side, we were pro-Dukes, or different sides of the fallout over Bruton. And I would say he is one of the foremost legal brains that I know. He, after I left politics, belatedly became a justice minister, didn't agree. He put it like this, I would say he lacks some emotional skills insofar as that he is very arrogant, and he's entitled to be arrogant on some issues because he's got a superior legal brain. The Child Care Act, in opposition, he actually drafted it. He knew more than the civil servants. However, in latter years,
isn't that part of Alan Shatter's thing? He always believes he knows more than anybody else.
Oh, so that's exactly what happened. So I was chairing this debate at the Sandyford Business District during the election, and nearly all the candidates for Dublin Rathdown were there. And so I was chairing. I'd be a fairly tough chairperson now if we're going to start on time. And these are the issues that the local group want done about roads or amenities or whatever. I wouldn't take much shit, to be honest with you. And so next thing, Sinead Gibney or someone asked in the question a question about what about Palestine, and I said, well, look, it's not part of our brief here, you know what I mean? It's beyond my pay grade. So next thing he gets up and he speaks for 10 minutes, and I said, Alan, we have to move on, I'm sorry about this. And he said, no, I know more about this than anyone else. And he proceeded in a really arrogant and abrasive and rude way, and I actually switched off his mic, and I said, would you show some respect to the chair? And I put it like this, it was no surprise, Alan Shatter got his answer. He got his answer in the election. Yeah, he got roundingly rejected.
He got nowhere near being elected.
So, like, the more he gets rejected, the more off losing the plot he is.
Okay, let's talk.
And so therefore, like, he sees everything through this prism that everyone hates Jews. He's absolutely wrong about that. And put it like this, but I think you can actually come to a conclusion not to proceed with the Occupied Territories Bill and, denounce Shatter. They're not mutually exclusive.
No. I think the problem for the government is how to get off the hook on the Occupied Territories Bill without it looking like a surrender to Israel, and without Israel then, the Israeli government trumpeting a success in seeing Ireland down. The presidential race, Catherine Connolly is going forward. Catherine Connolly, who, as I mentioned last week, there will be a lot of questions asked about her visit to Syria with Mick Wallace and Claire Daly and Maureen O'Sullivan back in, was it 2017 or 2018?
2018.
Whether that was an endorsement of the Assad regime, which was in place at the time, which she has utterly denied. So there'll be questions about that. The other story, given that it's All Ireland hurling final weekend, which I have enjoyed, that's come up about her, which I wonder how it will play out, is her attendance at the All-Ireland final 20 years ago when she was Mayor of Galway. Do you know about this? She must have got her ticket late because she hadn't arranged her transport. And at the expense of Galway City Council, she hired a limousine to bring her. And it cost €650. She's a John O'Donoghue type, it would seem, when it comes to this. And this caused quite a lot of controversy at the time. And it has resurfaced. Now, I suppose when you think of that and you think about...
The media are appalling. The dirt they dig, they're throwing enough muck and some of it will stick. Like, it is the new deplorables are the media. Carry on. I'm enjoying this.
She actually said there were no train tickets available at the time. And it would have cost more if she'd gone by taxi. The wags at the time were wondering, could she not have hired a helicopter? But this made her look... Remember the famous way John O'Donoghue got in all the trouble about taking the chauffeur-driven cars between terminals and Heathrow Airport and various other things. So she had to deal with that. But given that she clearly likes a chauffeur-driven car...
You missed the elephant in the room.
Wait, hold on.
Gemma O'Doherty.
Yes, hold on. She likes...
If I want to annoy Matt, I just say two words, Gemma O'Doherty. And he absolutely goes crimson.
I don't.
And then no, I've seen you over the years.
The camera is on me, YouTube, and my colour is not changing.
No. That triggers you, the word Gemma O'Doherty.
Let me finish, because she's obviously likes travelling in the style that she would become accustomed to if president. And actually, given that she has said almost nothing on Syria, that's actually possibly what a lot of people want out of a president who actually says nothing rather than having an opinion on something of controversy. But I would also be asking her, if as she was president, how would she react if the government told her she had to welcome Donald Trump to Áras an Uachtaráin? That would be a very difficult one for her.
Did she nominate Gemma O'Doherty?
She was part of the thing. I mean, there was a bunch of idiots. Everyone who was involved
now you're triggered. Go for it.
Nominating Gemma O'Doherty in the presidential election in 2018 wasn't paying attention and was an idiot.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. And so therefore, what I would add to the Catherine Connolly before we come on to the thing is that my prediction is that she won't win. My prediction is that in the spectrum of the left, I would identify her with Mick Wallace and Claire Daly, which became an issue in the European elections insofar as were they pro-Putin. But let all that play out.
Can I read you an email that we received?
Yes.
Stephen O'Byrnes, who I think was Assistant Government Press Secretary when the Progressive Democrats were in power, Desi O'Malley's time. He said, really enjoy your podcast, best in domestic current affairs politics, in my humble opinion. I think I've also managed to get a few friends to tune in and subscribe.
Thank you for that. Leave it at that, Stephen. You're going well up to that point.
Yeah, and then it's the big but or however, yes. Regarding your latest episode on the discussion on the presidency, a lot of your exchanges focused on Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald's chances of winning the presidential election. While I found your enthusiasm about her chances of winning surprising, I was totally...
As did we all?
As I was totally flabbergasted that neither of you. I got a lot of that as well.
What is Matt on?
I got a lot of people. What were you on? And that you're actually not reading the room. Anyway, I was totally flabbergasted that neither of you made any reference whatsoever to the biggest obstacle, downright disqualification, in my view, to the Sinn Féin leader becoming president. Surely you're aware that under the Constitution, the President of Ireland is the supreme commander of the Irish Army and has a variety of duties in that role, including appointing commissioned officers. Whatever about younger voters being unaware of Sinn Féin's symbiotic relationship with the IRA over the past 55 years, older voters will certainly be aware of it, and of matters like Mary Lou McDonald's anemic condemnations of IRA atrocities over the decades. She tends to regret the hurt suffered on all sides, her shouldering the coffins of former IRA men, and her steadfast defence of the armed struggle at a time when the SDLP's civil rights-based politics showed there was an alternative way forward for Northern nationalists. That was from Stephen O'Byrne's.
So first of all, let me, for those of you who don't know, explain who Stephen O'Byrne's is and was. He was a leading journalist with the Independent Group.
Irish Independent, yeah.
An Independent Group. He then went into politics and became close to Desi O'Malley and a SPAD, you call it today, special advisor, PR man, whatever, for the Progressive Democrats. Now, when as I have to do every week, have a swipe at the snowflake media that are actually clueless about politics and have leftist tendencies they can't see beyond. I'm talking about the way the world used to be. People like Stephen O'Byrne's, people like Stephen Collins, who actually called things out on their merits and actually had depth, authority, credibility and substance, which I'm not seeing in the column inches I'm reading these days. But anyway, the point is this, that Stephen, I hear you. And I want to say this. First of all, you've actually put your finger on why people aren't interested in the presidency. Because this says, the Constitution, which was written in 1937, says he's Supreme Commander of the Irish, almost like an Ayatollah, you know what I mean, in terms of supreme this or whatever. The Minister for Defence, Simon Harris, decides everything to do with the army. Decides if we're going to spend $2.5 billion or $500 million on it. They decide the terms and conditions. They decide who's appointed to the top job. So things like aide de camp and kind of ceremonial token things is what the president does. He has no real power in terms of security or defence policy. What will we do about the West Atlantic? It is a titular figure. So actually, it doesn't matter who's in the park. Defence policy operation, the running of the Irish Defence Forces and the Army won't be within the purview of the president. And so therefore...
I think it's the symbolic thing that Stephen O'Byrne's is pointing out, is that if Mary Lou McDonald has been supportive of... Now, we're told the IRA is no longer there, is disbanded. We'll ignore that Jerry Adams once said they haven't gone away, you know. But if we take it that the IRA is no more, does it actually matter if then Mary Lou McDonald doesn't criticise something that is no longer in existence?
Yeah, well, look, most of the texts I got after last week are saying there's no way we'll have a Provo in the park, which sums up that sentiment.
I did get a few people like that saying that they would almost be motivated to go and vote to keep Mary Lou McDonald out.
Or any Sinn Féin.
However, I also got quite a few people who also felt that, I wasn't advocating for Mary Lou McDonald. I was just setting out a way by which she might...
Sorry, did you feel the shift there, folks, listeners?
No, there wasn't. If anyone listens back...
It was like a tectonic plate move there.
Not in the least.
Not only was she going to win, but she should win, was the vibe I picked up.
Well, you see, you're not very good at reading the room occasionally. You see, you pick up what vibes you want to pick up.
No, I got it.
Anyway,
spent long enough on it.
The point I was making in that, I was trying to set out a position why I still think that she has an excellent chance of winning, because I do think, and she spent the week, or part of the week, over in England as well, and she went on Good Morning Britain television advocating for a united Ireland. And I think you're missing the point that I suspect that what Sinn Féin would do if they did run her as an election candidate, they'd have a twin-track approach, to use sort of an old peace process term. It would be one on the basis of her personality and popularity. And I know you can point to the opinion polls that suggest she only has a 38% popularity rating at present, but that would be one track, would be her. And the second one would that they would be trying to turn it into a proxy referendum on our desire for a united Ireland, that she would be a president to advance the cause of a united Ireland. And that's why I was putting forward. But actually here, and I'd forgot to say this last week, and I actually had seen on my way up to here last Friday morning posters in Kildare Street for an event she was at last Saturday.
The GPO one?
Yeah, Save the GPO. What a load of nonsense this campaign by both Sinn Féin and Aontú in relation to the GPO is. There is no threat to the GPO because there is a chance to refurbish and to renovate it, and they're turning it into this thing about, commercial interests will be going in there. It'll be office blocks. Hey, do you know what? It is an office block. When in 2024 the state was faced with a decision as to what to do with the ruins of the GPO after the Easter Rising, all the internals were destroyed, but the facade at the front was still intact. And the state made the decision, quite correctly, to restore and refurbish. But behind it, there was all the office space, which has been used for decades by An Post, and also the GPO arcade. Retail space was put in place as well. And that's where RTE used to broadcast its radio from first. Basically, it's all outdated, it's out of use, it needs to be refurbished. So this idea that it's going to be sold off to the private sector is a deliberate misrepresentation, I think, by Republicans as to what is actually happening. And I'm sure what will happen is that when none of that actually happens and other things will be done, they'll actually turn around and claim they saved it from a threat that actually doesn't even exist in the first place.
So, we're running out of time, and I want to
run way over.
No, but on the second episode, I want to talk a little bit more about the opinion poll and Sinn Féin. But can I tell you the two things about the presidency in the generality? So first of all, Mairead McGuinness and Catherine Connolly are up and running, and good luck to them. Mairead McGuinness, the 800 grand of expenses is starting to stick a bit. I'm hearing negative things about, when she was in the EU Commission in 2018, was it? No, 2020. She voted, for the saving the...
Sorry, I actually have pulled this out. I only did this morning because I thought you might bring it up.
The Mediterranean.
Yeah, basically it was a vote on a resolution to step up search and rescue efforts in the Mediterranean Sea. She was one of 4 Fine Gael MEPs who voted no against this. And I found the interview that she did with RT News. She said the provision would have required Frontex, which is the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, quote, to share information with all ships in the region, including traffickers. She said that would not have been acceptable. Instead, if the resolution had been passed, it would have made the situation worse. We had concerns about the actual content of it, not about the objective, she said. And then she said she will not allow anyone challenge my ethics or morality around saving lives. I'll tell you this much. It's going to be an issue.
No, and the 5-year-old that was found on the beach, was it Alan Curdy or someone like that? But anyway, what I want to talk about is this. My best Sinn Féin source, Deep Throat, said to me that Mary Lou would not be standing. Just pass it on for what it's worth. That is the considered position. They're quite happy to have the hoopla and all the focus on the party. The other thing I heard that was very interesting is that I actually thought about this. What happened in 2011 that Michael D got in? Because a Labour, is 10%. And what happened was Fianna Fáil were in such disarray after the absolute meltdown is the right word. In February that year, they just were in no position to fight anything. They had only one TD in Dublin. And then when it came to the re-election of Michael D, they stood back. So you had Sean Gallagher and Peter Casey as the principal candidates. What I'm really saying is this, that the elephant in the room here is what are Fianna Fáil going to do? And you know what I'm hearing? Because, there's no one within their ranks is coming forward, that it might just suit them if someone who is from the gene pool of Fianna Fáil, and I'm not talking about Declan Ganley here, but who's someone who maybe put a 200 grand of the money themselves. And the name I keep hearing is, this guy could get elected. And now you're going to laugh, you're going to fall off the chair when I say this, Michael Healy-Rae. From this point of view, that first of all, he has the resources to do it. Secondly, there's a lot of people resonate with his can-do. I think his son, Jackie, is being groomed to take over the Dáil seat eventually. And that actually there's 600 sheep in the Oris vicinity that the president has the run of, which he could mind. Like the truth of it is that he is from the Fianna Fáil gene pool. He'd do all the heavy lifting of a campaign, and that he is a slight possibility. What do you say to that?
I say I'm going to quote Alan Partridge and say, and on that bombshell, we end this edition of Facts of Power. We have more to talk about in the subscription edition. From me, Matt Cooper.
From me, Ivan Yates.
Thank you for listening to us.